Hi, my name is Anya, and the only thing you need to know about me is that I like My Little Pony. A lot. So, like any other My Little Pony fan, I've watched Equestria Girls. I don't really remember the first time I watched the movies, but I do know that ever since then, I've rewatched them more times than I can count. The most recent time, though, I realized that it felt slightly disconnected from the world we live in now. To be fair, though, it has been over a decade since the first movie came out in 2013. That's why I wanted to make a redesign of Equestria Girls to be a little bit more modern. And I had two main goals. The first one was to give the girls outfits that feel more like them and more unique. And the second one was to make them slightly more diverse and more modern. See, what I didn't know when I had first watched Equestria Girls was that, like the rest of the franchise, the main goal Hasbro had was to sell toy dolls. This meant that when they made Equestria Girls, they used one standard body type and a pretty standard set of clothes. Some type of top, a skirt, and some boots. Over the course of the movies, these outfits have changed a bit, but the standard body type has remained. I assume this was to make the dolls easier to mass produce and to make animation slightly easier, but to be honest, I have no idea. Before we start, though, I did want to say that with these redesigns, I decided to age them up a bit because it always felt weird to me that they were in high school. I mean, in the actual pony world, they all seem to have some type of job or job equivalent, so it personally never made sense to me that they were in high school. That being said, let's get into it. So I actually started this whole redesign process with Rainbow Dash, but I ran into so many issues with Rainbow Dash. This was mostly because of my art softwares and the devices that I was using. It was so much of a problem that I ended up starting on Fluttershy's redesign before I even got to finishing Rainbow Dash. So that's why we're going to be starting with Fluttershy for today's video. So for Fluttershy, one of the things I knew I really wanted to do was keep her tall and lanky. I thought it would make an interesting dynamic to have her be tall, because that would make it hard for her to go unnoticed. Obviously, her personality is someone who's very shy, so I thought it would be an interesting dynamic between her personality and her build. When I was going through the ideas for Fluttershy, I was trying to think of outfit types that felt very nature-y, considering that Fluttershy obviously loves animals. And that's mostly why I landed on this type of cottagecore vibe. When I was looking at cottagecore clothing on Pinterest, I seemed to find this one type of dress quite often. It was long and flowy, and generally was paired with some sort of corset. The corset was either embedded inside of the dress, or the person decided to add it on. So I decided to give Fluttershy the same type of outfit. I also noticed that a decent amount of people I came across paired their dresses and corsets with a bandana. So I gave her a bandana and decided to put her cutie mark on the bandana itself. For the colors of her dress, I found something really interesting that I had never noticed before this video. Fluttershy actually has two types of green in her design. I noticed that in her pony form, she tended to deal with this type of teal green, while in her Equestria Girl form, the green she had was more to the yellow side. So instead of deciding to choose between the two, I decided to stick with both of the greens, and I tried to interweave them in a way that hopefully reads as cohesive. For her hair, I wanted to deviate from both versions of Fluttershy. This was mostly because she's always around animals, and I thought that the animals would make her move a lot, or they would get caught up in her hair, so I wanted to make her hair seem less smooth like it does in both the Equestria Girl version and in the pony version, and I decided to give her more of a messy, wavy looking type of hair. I'm not sure whether it reads as messy or just wavy, to be honest, but either one of them made sense to me personally. Fluttershy's design honestly turned out a lot more simple than I originally thought it was going to be, but I'm still quite happy with it. So, here's the final design.
So, Rainbow Dash. I love her character so much, which is why she was actually the first one I was drawing. But, as you can see in this video, and like I mentioned earlier, there were some problems along the way. As you can see, I'm tracing a design, and this is because I had originally drawn Rainbow Dash on my drawing tablet, which was connected to my computer. But then, my computer crashed, and I had a very low quality image of my drawing, and no footage of the speed paint. I had really liked the design I came up with, but I no longer trusted my computer not to crash. So, for this speed paint, I'm both tracing and referencing my own art to create a final design. I do want to mention that I actually did end up making some slight changes from my previous design. So, let's get into it. Rainbow Dash was someone who was always depicted as sporty, and one of the things that really bothered me with Equestria girls was that they barely showed that side of her. Yes, they showed us that she played sports within the first movie, but then throughout the series, it seemed like they kind of forgot, and it was an afterthought. Maybe that's just me though. But because of that, I really wanted to showcase her athletic abilities with this redesign. So starting off, I gave her a more athletic build, and a pose that hopefully shows off her abilities. I also never really thought she would wear a skirt to begin with, considering how hard it would be to play sports. I decided instead to give her an outfit that showed off her build, considering that in both of the movies and the show, she actually really likes to show off. Another issue I had with Rainbow Dash's Equestria girls design was the lack of cohesiveness. I think it's mostly the colors, and I think that was probably a choice made considering her name has the word rainbow in it. But I decided that it would be better if I keep her cutie mark colors as a kind of palette, and I put those colors as accents throughout the design. I kept her actual cutie mark itself as part of her shirt, although I originally did put it as a necklace charm. Now, for her hair, I really do think she would wear it up, to be honest, but this design was what I thought it would look like if she had worn it out. I think she would honestly opt to have shorter hair rather than the ridiculously long hair they gave her in the movies. I think this design came out a lot better than I initially expected, especially with those crashes along the way. Maybe it's because it went through 2 drafts, but either way, I'm really, really happy with the final result. So, here it is. Overall, I'm really happy with these redesigns, despite the technical issues. Obviously, I didn't get through all of the main ponies, but let me know if that's something you want to see in the future. See you next time!